Hello everyone and welcome to episode 51 of Generation GC, The Day That I Die from the Young and the Hopeless, Good Charlotte's 2002 sophomore album, with my guest Drew Conte, the bassist of I Call Fives. Last week we talked about East Coast Anthem from Good Charlotte. Next week we'll be talking about a song from The Chronicles of Life and Death. I Call Fives is a pop-punk band from South Jersey. They released a few EPs, and then in 2012, they put out their self-titled album on Pure Noise Records. I Call Fives played the Vans Warped Tour in 2012. They played Skate and Surf in 2013. They played Soundwave Festival in Australia in 2014. They've played with Man Overboard, With the Punches, Citizen, The Dangerous Summer, and so many more. But the band had been pretty inactive for the past several years, until last year, 2020, they started working on some stuff again, and you'll hear Drew and I talk about that. And then on February 19th, they'll be releasing a cover song, their take on At Your Funeral, originally by Saves the Day, which is their first new release since, I believe, 2012. Drew and I have known each other for going on 10 years. I first interviewed I Call Fives back in 2011, and I remember feeling like they were one of the first bands who really got what I was doing with Circles and Soundwaves. So that was a really, really great feeling. And it's just been so great staying in touch, and I can't wait to see what the band does next. Before we go into this episode, I wanted to give a heads up, a content trigger warning, that this episode does discuss death and suicide. There are no graphic incidents discussed, and we don't mention any methods or specific examples of harm, but it does relate closely to what comes into some of our interpretations of the song. So it is discussed, and it is relevant, and I wanted to have that discussion because I think it's really, really important to have difficult discussions sometimes. But if you do need to turn off this episode, if you need to catch up with us next week because you're having a rough spot and you're just not feeling like you can comfortably sit with something like that, that's okay. Come back next week. Next week's episode is not going to touch on these topics, I promise. But if it does bring you comfort, then that's great, because I know sometimes it can be nice to just hear people talking about difficult things. I also wanted to give some resources, and I will leave these in the show notes too. If you are in the US, if you're struggling, please call 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Or you can text HOME to 741-741 for crisis text line. You can also visit the To Write Love on Her Arms website, twloha.com. And you can click their Find Help button and they will direct you to crisis resources in your area. If you are in Canada, you can call the Crisis Assistance Hotline at 833-456-4566. And please, if you are struggling, if you are in crisis, please don't hesitate to call or text one of these crisis resources. I promise you there's no shame, and it shows a lot of strength that you are willing to reach out. But you also don't have to wait until that point to ask for any kind of help. As a reminder, I also wanted to encourage you all to please visit blacklivesmatters.card.co and antisemitism.card.co to learn more about the Black Lives Matter movement and anti-Semitism, respectively. I want us all to continue educating ourselves and staying informed in 2021. And it's Black History Month, so it's as good of a time as ever to keep yourself informed on racism. Finally, Generation GC stickers. These second batch are on their way. I've seen the proof. Holy shit, guys. They're going to look so cool. I can't wait. And if you want stickers, there's two ways you can get them. Number one, you can go to anchor.fm/GenerationGCPod and click support right there. And all that money goes right back into helping the show. It helps me get equipment that I need, such as headphones, cables, laptop stand. It helps me print the stickers. For reference, the current batch of stickers that are on their way to me cost about $35. So it just helps me keep the show going and make it the best it can be. Or you can make a charitable donation. In honor of Black History Month, I want you to go to blacklivesmatter.card.co and donate to any of the charities listed there, whatever you can afford to give. It's going to make a really big difference. And then you are going to send me a screenshot of either your support of the show on Anchor or your charitable donation, as well as your mailing address, and I will send you stickers. You can send me a DM at GenerationGCPod, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can email generationgcpod@gmail.com. Well, that's about it for our intro. Thank you all for tuning into episode 51, and now on to the discussion.
All right, so The Day That I Die. This one is track 11 on The Young and the Hopeless. I abbreviated it in my notes, and I was trying to think, like, how on earth would you pronounce that? Tiath?
Oh, okay.
Tiath? Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't think that's, like, solidified yet, though. Which was their second album released in 2002. Track 10 was Say Anything. Track 12 was The Young and the Hopeless. So I know you had a slow track and then something that's like a downer, but a little more upbeat. And then The Young and the Hopeless just goes hard, hard, hard.
Sure.
Notable about this song, Benji Madden that sings lead vocals on the verses. I believe it is Joel singing lead on the choruses, though. The song was written by Benji and Joel Madden, and it has been played live. Not very often. Setlist.fm has it ranked number 59 on their most played songs with 5 records of it being played, but of course, disclaimer as always that probably not entirely accurate, but that gives you a general picture. Setlist.fm is telling me it hasn't been played since 2003. And as we will get into, I mean, this song is super dark. So, I get why it was not played live very often. So, we do have a lot to talk about with The Day That I Die. But first, Drew, I want to help our guests get to know you.
Okay.
So, when did you first hear Good Charlotte, and what were your first thoughts on them?
Oh, man. So... One of the first times I remember hearing them actually was there was a 9/11 tribute song with, I want to say it was with Mest and with Goldfinger.
Yep.
And it was Innocent. I don't know what the actual title was.
Yeah.
The Innocent, right. I think that's one of the first times I heard them, and I was just like, oh my God. So this is showing my age, much pre, Spotify or even, iTunes, all that. This was like a Kazaa thing. Kazaa was my Napster of choice. So when I illegally stole music, I did it. I think it was pronounced Kazaa. But I remember getting that song then and being like, okay, Good Charlotte, cool. Plus, I'm pretty sure that they were on, it wasn't a Tony Hawk, but it was I think they were on one of this other skate game that I had. But regardless, and then with TRL connections. So there was several outlets that brought me to them. But yeah, so certainly the first time I heard him, I was in, so this has to be around 2001. I was a 13-year-old young man. And I liked him because, I was a fan of pop punk, and just, the Blink-182 and the Newfound Glory of the world. But these guys, well, and I kind of say that so quickly. I'm certain that I knew these guys before I knew Newfound Glory.
Really?
So I think, I have a very weird backstory with pop punk. So I really first, outside of Blink-182 and Green Day, I first got connected with a band called Midtown because I watched I used to watch the Road Rules Real World Challenge.
Oh, God.
And they were the intro band in 2001-ish or maybe 2002. I hope it's not 2006, then I'll look like a sucker. No, it was about 01 or 02. And on the bass drum, it said Midtown. I was like, Midtown. So that actually introduced me to the whole drive-through world. But so outside of, again, the big Blink Green Day realm, Good Charlotte and then not much long after was Simple Plan. So those were kind of the first two. So as much as I want to be no, I knew, the Movie Life in 1999, I certainly didn't. I wasn't listening to Can't Slow Down when I was 10, despite and it's funny because I'll hear people I was 9 and I heard, no, that wasn't. I was listening to literally Boys to Men I listened to when I was 9.
Nice.
So that's, So I do recall the illegal download of The Innocent. And then I know I certainly I did buy the LP, and that was The Young and the Hopeless, and that was a total game changer for me.
Amazing. So you had mentioned this to me when we talked over the summer, but you have a connection to the Waldorf area. So let's talk about that.
Well, and that's why, and I don't want to spoil it because this is a great song, and I'm happy we're talking about it. But that's why I was first like, well, what about Waldorf Worldwide? So I lived in Southern Maryland from when I was 7 till about 12 years old. Okay. The irony is
around when, like right before when you would have discovered them, probably.
Yeah. So I want to say, 7th grade is when I moved at 12. And that year is when I discovered them. And I remember being like, Waldorf. And it's hilarious because, at the time, so I lived there from 95 to 2000. Super rural. We used to joke that like Southern Maryland is like Southern Alabama.
Really?
Oh God, yeah. So I remember hearing like these guys like, that doesn't make sense because folks down there, particularly then it's interesting. They've come a long way. But folks down there big into country, like NASCAR was king, like all those things were.
So
were
it's
staples.
really like below the Mason-Dixon line.
Even though it's not. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, like, if folks would hit a deer with their car, it was commonplace to scoop up the deer, and now you got supper. So,
don't tell me that I'm vegan.
Yeah. Oh gosh, for many reasons that's cringy, but right. I also like to say supper when referring to like a Southerner's dinner.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it wasn't, in any way was it traditional for that sort of sound. And that's what I also think is kind of interesting, though, when I think back on their lyrics. And I will disclose this now. As much as I loved this record and the self-titled before it, I haven't given them a chance in about 15 years.
Okay.
It just wasn't for me. And I'll also be the first to admit that I was like way too cool. At age 18, I was like, oh, like I'm the same though. Like I remember when Infinity on High came out by Fall Out Boy. And it was This Ain't a Scene. I was like, oh God, no one's gonna like this.
I have the controversial opinion that Fall Out Boy's best record in a while is Mania, and Infinity on High is better than Take This to Your Grave,
and that's fair. Yeah, but
that's again, a separate podcast, and we won't go down that rabbit hole.
I only preface it because it shows how out of touch. Because I remember when I was like 19 and I heard it on the radio. And I was like, oh, these guys are sellouts, man. Like blah blah. No way. Like it's a totally great record. But yeah, sadly, I think I stopped giving Good Charlotte a chance. And that also kind of speaks to their dynamics, though. Like they were certainly. How do I say? I guess they looked more like almost like a nu metal band than they did a pop punk band.
Yeah, like Blink wasn't dressing like this.
No. And
Newfound Glory, I don't think dressed like this. I mean, they had tattoos, but
they had a goth kind of look. Particularly, I remember the one guitarist who was wearing like fishnets and shit.
Billy, yeah.
Billy. Yeah. But no, like again though, and that's what sort of I always thought was interesting though, because at the core of this, I mean that LP is just a great rock record, and I think it really does expand genres, and I think part of their I don't want to say gimmick because that has a negative connotation, but part of their appeal was that they really crossed genres, and I think they did the whole we're for the outcasts. But I think they did it well. So in a very inviting way. I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but so from Waldorf, I really went over a lot of things there. Very confusing there. So again, Waldorf, super rural. I think that they probably pulled more experience from maybe they were in DC a lot because they certainly sing about DC a bunch. But I guarantee you that
a bit,
the exciting stuff was not happening in their hometown of Waldorf. So I don't know what the hell they were doing, but yeah. And it's funny, so I was back there. I was there actually about 4 or 5 years ago. and it's totally different. They have a Panera Bread now, and I feel like
they have a Panera Bread. That's something.
Yeah, you can gauge a town by. It looked as though like they had a Panera, like a Buffalo Wild Wings. They've come a long way. But when I was from there, I lived about 30 minutes away, and that's where I believe that's where the closest mall was. So like literally that was the mall within 30, 45 minutes for all of Southern Maryland. So it was that sort of like super rural. There's Amish down there. Not exactly where you would expect to see a rock band, however we want to define them. That wouldn't have been the home area that I would have suspected. Yeah.
But I had in my notes, I was like, would things have been different for the band if they were actually from a different area? But I kind of wonder maybe if the whole thing of like being outcasts just might have been a different experience if you were from a major city or even like a bigger suburb versus somewhere that's like super.
Yeah, I mean, everybody draws inspirations, from different places, but I still think at the core of it, they have a very urban feel in their songs, and I trust that they would describe themselves as outcasts in any setting. Sure. They could have been at CBGB's in 1984 and been like, "Well, we were outcasts." So it's even though they have a very fitting look. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad they were from Waldorf because if my fandom for those two records in particular, I love them. They were majorly influential on me and a lot of folks I know.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I would love to hear about that. So this will all be in the intro, but we know each other through you being in I Call Five. So how has Good Charlotte influenced you making music?
Well, it's funny because there's always been so many times as a bass player, so one of the reasons, and I'll be the first to admit, one of the reasons I picked up a bass was, the guitar has 6 strings and the bass has 4. And I was like, well, I'll take the one with 4. So particularly when I was younger, not that I'm much better now, but you were always kind of on like the search for pretty easy to play songs, and the little things, not to, to stray from the song we're talking about, but Little Things was such, like that was the song that pretty much anyone could play. So one of the first songs I picked up on bass at if I went to a friend's house, it was like, yeah, I know that song. But so then, just in writing, I would so many times in life, like I found myself playing that bass line. Just the simplicity of it, but it was like just a really easy part that just kind of hit you. I would say otherwise, though, they really didn't influence me much, only because they play really low. So the way, well, at least a lot of Young and Hopeless, it's in a really low key. And it's much more of, again, not to reference like Linkin Park, but it's in more of like a metal-y kind of tuning.
I mean, they would be honored to like hear a Linkin Park comparison.
Why not? Yeah. Hell of a band, but they're not playing in tunings like the typical like Blink New Found Glory songs. However, vocally, I always kind of liken them to, particularly on this record and this song, I so very much hear Mike Herrera from MXPX when I hear pretty much this whole record. They still put their own touch on it for sure, but they have that sort of pop sensibility vocally in particular that was just so apparent. But yeah, so look, I mean, they were one of the first songs I learned. So I'm certain that they've had an influence, but whereas I could admit that there was a stage where I was just like, okay, how do I rip off this New Found Glory song? Sadly, that never happened with Good Charlotte, but again, that speaks more to they were just playing so low. Yeah. But yeah, but in terms of like pop sensibility with the vocals, and then it also kind of gave you the sense of like, hey, maybe I could do this, because they kind of gave off like a regular, despite being like with tattoos and all that, they still gave you like a regular people sort of feel.
Right. Like they would meet your mom and they would like, your mom would probably like them.
Yeah. And like, again, they still played to that outcast thing, but they did it in such a likable way, I thought. So,
yes.
So yeah, I think, nothing explicitly, I couldn't liken a particular song to them.
Yeah.
But again, like in 8th grade, knowing little things, even though the most simple of bass line says, yeah, I could play that song, because at that age you're like, yeah, I know songs.
Yeah.
But if you're not, especially to like people listen to like, I don't like Rush, I'm like, oh my God, I can't play that. So it was nice to have a song like Little Things for the easy bass line guys out there like me.
I love it. As we talk about like your music and I Call Fives, I mean, Fives has not put out music since I think it's 2012, but I mean, there have been like a few shows like over the years here and there, but you are working on some new stuff. So what's it been like writing again?
Well, so it's been 8 years since we released anything. We were really lucky to, the mantra sort of was always, never say never. And that allowed us the opportunity to go to Australia and play with Green Day.
Yeah.
We played a show with Man Overboard where Soupy sang.
I remember that. I still have the set list from that.
That was a hell of a time.
I have the set list from that, and there's like notes on it because I think it might have been Soupy's set list. Sure. So there's like some notes on it.
We really, like we had a little musical intro, and there was like a light thing going on, and he came out, and it was a thing. And then we did a Bad Advice show 4 years ago. So we were actually supposed to do one this summer for the 10-year anniversary. But it was just great getting back together with the folks and getting into a room pre-March with COVID. We have a mix of old and more recent members. Jeff singing, and we like to always kind of say like he is our singer for life. So to get together with these guys, a bunch of them have kids. Everybody's a little bit older, a little bit fatter, as I like to always say. But it's just been good to see these people that, that I've known some of these folks for as many as 20 years.
Same.
So to kind of to come back with a different, to look at this through a different lens has just been enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because back, 8 years ago, we were on deadlines. We were just kind of scraping by in between tours, and a much different approach on life then. So
yeah, it's
just been fun to do it.
Yeah. So I have to ask, are there any like solid plans for a release of any new music?
Yeah. So there's going to be 2 songs that come out pretty soon.
Awesome.
Jeff would be upset if I said when, but it'll be soon. And we are working on a more full-fledged release that we hope to record sooner rather than later. It's just, again, with the COVID stuff, it's been really tough. But we were in the studio in October with Casey from the Wonder Years. He produced it and engineered it. Actually, Kennedy from the Wonder Years played drums. So we're doing our best. Man, we had Stupid on the Sun. We were really just hoping to hit a point where we're considered like baby Wonder Years.
Right.
Because technically they're all a little bit older than us. So I'm sure they would love for us to bill ourselves as that. But yeah, so it was nice because just because for personal stuff was going on, it was nice to be able to talk to Kennedy, have him do the songs. We were really happy to have the opportunity to record with Casey. He's got a great studio not far from my hometown in South Jersey. So we did the 2. That'll come out sooner rather than later. And like I said, we're working on a bigger release, and we're just trying to take our time.
Yeah.
But I have to admit that it's been so exciting because, when you have the time to really, really just kind of see this stuff through and not rush it, and you can redo things and listen back and really just exhaust time and effort. It's opened up an interesting layer for our songs. So I'm really excited to see how it turns out, and I'm very proud of what the guys have been doing. I'm
so excited to hear everything. Last question before we do our deep dive on The Day That I Die. Have you ever seen Good Charlotte live?
I actually haven't. I know that there's been opportunities. So to be fair, there was a long stretch where I really just wasn't home, like in the earlier years where I wanted to see them. And then they did come back around. I guess this was a reunion thing 2 years ago. Yeah. I really wanted to go and I couldn't make it. And I do remember hearing that Cameron Diaz was at the show. Yeah, she's married to Benji Madden. She is, and it was a whole big thing. And so, no, I never had the opportunity, but I know that they're a great live band, and I hope that again, when this all shakes out, I'd love to particularly see. That's why I was surprised to see the Last FM. I'm not shocked they didn't play it a ton. And again, these guys, their tuning is all over the place. Not that they don't have like the guitars and the crew to sort that out. But that's also part of why, like, for smaller bands, like, you don't want to have if you have a song like super low, like, you don't really have the capability to, like, you're tuning up and down and all that. But I trust that, that song probably didn't fall on there. And gosh, to have that many songs where you can say, nah, we don't need that one.
Right.
But I think it's a great song. I was just surprised that, let's just say Last Defend is even, a quarter of the times right. That's still 20 times they might have played it. So that was surprising.
Yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, many reasons. I mean, as we get into the content of the song, I'm sure that maybe that relates to, who knows? But why did you want to talk about The Day That I Die in particular?
Well, it's a horrible answer, but it's because Waldorf Worldwide was taken.
It was, and that episode was recorded like a couple days before you called me.
Of course. And then my other favorite song, so this was 3 though, to be fair, but the second one was My Bloody Valentine.
Which was done earlier this year, yeah.
And the irony of that, so there's a pretty popular, like, cool guy or cool girl, cool whoever rock band called My Bloody Valentine. So
yes.
I remember when I first heard, I was like, is this?
I thought that was a reference to the Good Charlotte song.
I swear, like, I assumed that Good Charlotte had named it after, maybe they did, but I remember thinking, like, man, there's a correlation. Like, people really like this Good Charlotte song, huh?
Right.
But I truly have an experience with that because I was in 8th grade and it was Valentine's Day, and I didn't have a Valentine. It was that was the song that was pulling on my heartstrings.
Yeah.
But so then this came next, and on Young and the Hopeless. I always loved it. Again, it's just a great pop song that has rock. It's got and it has a really cool, like, riff to it. I just really liked it as a song. And I think it's different. And that's what I also like about the LP in itself is they have a lot of different sounds in it, but it's still, it's really smoothed over with the pop vocals. And even and I didn't realize, because I really think Benji and Joel sound a lot alike. It depended upon the scenario.
Benji's a little, like, raspier.
Right. So to have, like, the dirtier saying verse. I don't know. I always really liked the song, and it always stuck out.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and as I've been, like, just have had all these, like, listening to all the albums on repeat, that really has stuck out to me about this album. Just, like, how many different sounds they really are doing here.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And it's not common particularly for this genre of album. Like, if you listen to the Newfound, the Simple Plan, Midtown, say you name it, it all is pretty much in the same tune. These guys, though, they really introduce some different stuff. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about what this song means. So I would love to hear, like, what is your interpretation of the lyrics?
Well, gosh. So, I mean, there's a literal way to take the song for sure. And I don't necessarily, like, so I really can't comment. Like, when I was younger, I literally thought it was about someone that was just like, I've had a good run here. Yeah. And I think this is it. Now, again, I know that there are, literal.
I'm 95 lyrics. And I'm just going to, like, it's just going to end.
Yes. Yeah. But so, there is a reality, though, where you can say, like, he is writing in that point of view. And maybe that's it. But I'll admit that when I was younger, I certainly didn't think that it was someone, preparing for self-harm. Yeah. And of course, I'd love to endorse that was not the connotation, and I sure hope it wasn't. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of all over the place, right? It's talking about the happiest day, but it's there's letting go. I think that there's some positives to those things. So I don't know. I kind of looked at it like someone that was just looking back on what they perceived as a good life. Yeah. And then they mention, driving and chatting with friends. Something that I was really disappointed to learn was, and I didn't know that until today, I always thought that the dog's name was Castro. And
no, it's Cash Dog because he's a boxer, like Cassius Clay. Yeah.
I thought he was named after, and I'm not kidding. I thought he was named after Fidel Castro.
Oh gosh.
And I really always thought like, all right, well, they said that they're broke and they just want like an even share. Maybe they're into like deep socialism and communist the ideals. I never knew, but I could have sworn up and down that this was about a dog named Castro barking. And I found that out by Googling, and I found an old GeoCities fan page. And I learned all about Cash Dog. He had a girlfriend that was in another music video. He was born in 1999.
Yeah.
So I'm well versed with Cash Dog now, but
yeah.
Like I said, I thought it was Castro. But yeah, so again, he spent the day with his dog that he liked. They went to the park.
That's a good day.
I like to think, and the way that I had always perceived it was just about somebody reflecting on a good day, so much so that they were content with it being done.
Yeah.
And that very well could be it. And again, I sure hope that it's not advocating for self-harm, but
yeah.
And I understand it. Like, I think we're a lot more cerebral in 2020, which is a great thing. But I still think that there are scenarios where, it's not always as literal as we might perceive it. And I sure hope that's the case.
Yeah. I mean, straight up, and this is what I put in my notes, and this is like, I think, a big and relevant discussion around this song. Personally, like now, as a 29-year-old, I think this song is about suicide. My interpretation, obviously, I don't know what it was written about. Definitely when I was younger and first heard the song, I probably got more of that interpretation. Now, definitely my interpretation is colored by my own experiences with mental health over the years. But honestly, like my interpretation of the song, again, very colored by my experiences, but my interpretation is that this is someone who has made the decision to end their life and they have some peace. And, they don't say, I'm going to hurt myself, but like, the letter, the bit about calling your mother and writing her a letter. People who are like generally well-adjusted are not happy about calling their mom and taking their dog to the park for the very last time. And in like a very, very dark way, because I think that comes from ultimately a very dark place. The thought, like the decision of hurting yourself and taking your life, when you finally made that decision, it's like, oh, okay, like I'm not going to be suffering anymore.
Sure.
Extremely dark, but
peppered over a country pop song with a really cute riff,
right?
So
right.
Again, I think that's what's really great about arts in general.
Yeah.
Again, like there's a reality. This is about the dog. I don't. This could be about Cash Dog. Now, of course, there's hints that it wouldn't be, but
right.
Interpretation is key. And just kind of where we're all at, like in our own journeys. Not to sound like a hippie here, but like where we're at our point in lives when we interpret it, that plays a major role in how we can be. I am not
actively suicidal right now. I want to be very clear.
Thank you.
That.
I'm glad. Thank God. I was hoping this wouldn't be the last one.
No. That has not been like that kind of issue in many years.
Good.
Just being clear for anyone that's concerned. Yeah.
But yeah, I think also, I really do think that part of this being almost 20 years ago is a time where, and of course, like, we hear really silly songs all the time now that literally might say, very explicit things, but I think this was just an attempt to write a pop song in a different way.
Yeah.
And like I said, I hope, because to glorify and to do anything like that, of course, would be, I could never condone.
Yeah.
But I think they came out with a hell of a pop song. And they did it again, though, like the parts outside of the chorus in particular, like the last, like that outro part about did I live it right? And like this, and I hope I did. I just think that's such an interesting.
And they were like 22 when they wrote that. That's like a very big question.
Yeah, and I think again, because at the core of this is a pop pop rock song. What an interesting question to ask the listener for this, for this type of song.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think, of course, interpretation's open to anyone and how they perceive it, but I hope that it wasn't negative. It certainly could be seen that way, but hell of a song.
Definitely. So I do want to talk about just some research about suicide and depression and recovery, because I think that is really relevant. I know that a lot of the people that listen to this show that are Good Charlotte fans have struggled with that. So I want to kind of bring that perspective. And I want to bring up the question, which I guess we can kind of decide at the end, but is this song glorifying or romanticizing suicide in any way? So keep that in mind.
Sure.
In terms of research and that kind of thing, so the Cleveland Clinic has a list of warning signs for suicide, and listeners, honestly, I will link that in the show notes because that's just a great thing to familiarize yourself with, just in terms of paying attention to the people around you. But, they do mention a sudden calmness, suddenly becoming calm after a period of intense depression can be a sign that a person has made a decision to end his or her life. So,
sure,
something to look out for. I did find a paper called "Are Patients with Depression at Heightened Risk of Suicide as They Begin to Recover?" Just pointing to the idea of, well, because I was curious about that. Like, as I was listening to the song and getting ready for this, like, is there any correlation between feeling calm or happy or having energy after you have been really depressed? This paper basically said no, there was not necessarily heightened risk, but one possibility this paper mentioned is that suicides that occur when patients seem to be improving are unexpected, even paradoxical, so therefore they are particularly memorable. And then once something is more memorable, it's perceived as being more frequent than it actually is. But this paper did not find a risk factor for like the early recovery period, but people should be, I think their findings were that, definitely people should continue to be monitored very closely throughout treatment.
And hey, if I could just say, I think it's it's a fragile state, right?
Yeah.
So it's such a good thing that we even have these studies and bringing these topics to any sort of discussion is just, it's great. But the reality is there's not always necessarily a science to something so so fractured. But man, I just hope for anyone that does seek help at all, that's the first step. Yeah, I'll admit, today my therapist canceled on me. And it's like, oh man, I was really looking forward to this. Was my hour session today.
Yeah.
But and particularly with COVID and everything going on, I mean, it's an important time to have dialogue with people and to be open and talk about the stuff that's going on, because it's really easy to let that stuff kind of get ahead of you. But yeah, I would just say again, any of these studies are great because it's putting science towards it, but I think it's really hard to gauge, even statistically, to quantify or qualify. It's a very fragile state.
It's very fragile, and it's like there was, I don't know if it was this study or if this was just like mentioned in another that I had read, but I didn't link here. But it has also been mentioned that like people are possibly like, if someone has been in like an inpatient hospitalization and then they transition to like outpatient therapy, like that transition period can be more of a likelihood, not necessarily a causation, but more of a likelihood. So it was mentioned that like people need to be watched.
Sure. Yeah.
There was an article that I read on Healthline that I don't know. I'm like here and there if I want to like link it, but it was what someone who had previously attempted suicide once suicide loss survivors to know. And this person talked about how, like, it was very frank in a way that honestly was, like, kind of bone-chilling to read. But they talked about that, like, in order to attempt suicide, a person has to be in the neurological state where they can override their own survival instincts. At that point, it's an acute state, not totally unlike a heart attack or other medical crisis.
This is like the theory that you can't stab yourself.
Yeah.
And I get it. Yeah. Oh gosh. And it's such an in-depth topic that I certainly am not capable to properly answer, but
yeah.
I don't think that you could be in the most clear of mindsets to be able to do that. But again, I've never been in that state.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I could see why someone would make that argument. But gosh, who really know? When you're in that spot, all that we can know is that clearly someone is in a very difficult time. But yeah, whether or not that there's some sort of like gray area that they were able to kind of ride that wave to allow themselves to do that, I don't know.
I mean, I was really hoping to find like more backstory on this song. I did not.
Well, they only played it 5 times.
Yeah, but I think just from personal experience, like I will say that like when I'm at a moment of crisis, writing about it can be very therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
And writing about it in a way that's, and again, this is my interpretation of the song. I don't know what was going through their heads. Because I think what you had said is also very valid. And I think also very important perspective. But from my just personal life experience, like whenever I've had like a moment of crisis, writing about it in a way that's just like very frank and like, this is how I feel and this is how I might feel if that happens, like is kind of better than like, oh, I used to be really sad and now I'm happy.
It's turning something actually, it's genuinely making art out of emotion.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to reduce this at all, but like Stacy's mom, she probably didn't exist in that song, right? So at the same time, they really might have been sitting around saying, you know what the 15-year-olds of today could use? A song like this.
A song about how hot their mom is. A song their friend's mom is. Yeah.
I mean, that could be the same sort of approach here.
Mm-hmm.
Who's to say? And again, I'm not suggesting that they're disingenuous, but
yeah. I mean, the reference to Cash Dog makes it feel pretty like...
He'll always be castrated, me. Is the dog still alive? He's not 21, is he? I wanted to know he had a long, happy life.
I'm sure he did, and I know that Benji is always like advocating for rescue dogs.
That's awesome. I myself have a rescue mutt.
Your dog is so cute, June.
He's something, yeah, Junior, yeah.
Ugh, amazing. The singer of Social Animals also has a dog named June.
Okay, it's a great name.
Yeah, great name.
Now he's heard us and he's perked up. So
yeah, he'll have to do a guest spot.
A guest bark, yeah.
Right. Ugh, God, I can't wait to get a dog. Yeah, I was like really hoping to find some backstory on this. It was also like searching it. I would just pull up interviews that had the word "day,"
Sure.
So that is an unfortunate situation that I've had with a couple of the song titles. But yeah, I would be curious to hear like what inspired it. But a thing we constantly run into on this show is like a good song can be interpreted in multiple ways.
Even a bad song can, yeah.
yeah. But in a good song, I think maybe those multiple interpretations are more valid. I don't know.
Sure.
Do you have any memories or stories that you wanted to share about The Day That I Die?
I don't. Again, it was just really, it was that record in itself was like, that was the kind of record that I was in my bedroom, like playing air guitar to, or then playing the bass along to, even though, again, really couldn't play very well. So I just kept playing little things. But no, it just really helped show me again, like it's just a great pop record with some dark tones and some interesting different like rock dynamics. So that song in particular, outside of, again, like it has the feel of like a pop country song.
It really does.
And I keep that riff, that na 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 na. It's just such a cool. I really enjoy it. But yeah, they found it. They managed to do something very particular.
The other, when I think about like country-ish songs of theirs, I also think of Cars Full of People. But like I think this was when I had Leah Knight on the show over the summer talking about something else. And she plays guitar, you know, not in bands or anything, but she had mentioned that she really likes playing this song on guitar just because it's really fun to like sit around the campfire and play.
Sure, yeah.
And it definitely is like that kind of feel, although definitely it's like a very dark song. But I would have loved to hear like a country artist cover this, because I think that could have sounded really
totally
great.
Could have been done, yeah. And who's to say it doesn't still happen?
Yeah, maybe it does.
Dustin from We Still Dream is like a country artist now. So.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Hell of a singer, and so maybe I can pitch it to him. But yeah, it's just again, they had an knack for doing interesting kind of, you know, if you listen to, say, yeah, around that time, and it's funny, another one that I really liked was All American Rejects on that LP. But for the most part, those songs all sound the same.
Yes.
And that's what I really thought with Good Charlotte was so just unique. And this song, it really helps show, especially then with Young and Hopeless following up after. And Say Anything Before It. I mean, they're just all very different, but it's blended together by, again, just great pop vocals.
Yeah. Just as we talk about like memories around this song, like my big one that I just have to share is like not on kind of the more serious side. There are like more serious stories that go with many songs. But with this song, my one memory that sticks out is playing this album in the car with my dad on the way home from
hell yeah.
gymnastics camp. And, you know, my dad was on this podcast, and my dad, you know, by osmosis knows many Good Charlotte songs, but,
Sure.
you know, just me being 11 years old and like being so excited to show this CD to my dad and like having a conversation with him about what it's about, and him kind of taking the Grateful Dead interpretation. Like I remember him bringing up Grateful Dead and just this idea of like, all right, like I've lived a long and happy life and now I can just, you know, adios. Sure. But yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah. In terms of other songs it relates to, I mean, musically we mentioned Cars Full of People as like also being kind of country-ish.
Okay.
Emotionally, obviously they have a lot of songs about depression and suicide, but I feel like the most clear corollary is kind of Meet My Maker, which is just the dark and aggressive, like, all right, it's tonight, it's happening.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I stopped listening to them. I just knew that these dark songs were coming, so I had to bow out. No, I look forward to listening to those songs, though. Yeah.
Chronicles was interesting because you had the two bonus versions. The life version ended in Falling Away.
Okay.
Which is not like a happy song, but it's not like a I'm gonna die song. Meet My Maker is exactly what it sounds like.
Just as it's built, right?
Yeah, exactly as it's built. So I'm curious. I would recommend, if you haven't listened to Chronicles, like listen to it once.
Is that the one with I Just Want to Live?
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen to it like one time with the life version with Falling Away at the end, and then one time the death version with Meet My Maker at the end.
Interesting. Okay. No, I'm willing to give them a shot.
Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts. Alternate versions. So there is an acoustic version of this song.
Oh, I didn't know that. There. And I will certainly be listening to that. Awesome.
Yeah. It's good. I don't know what the context of that release was. It's uploaded to YouTube in some like, Bizarro fan upload with like a slideshow or something. But I'm thankful for that, because those kind of videos obviously mean that a lot of, songs and releases and demos and alternate versions of things get to live on.
Yeah.
So I want to read some reviews of this, and they're like...
There's some interesting ones here.
Yeah, they're like all over the place. Sputnik Music gave the album a 3.5 out of 5, specifically giving this song a 4 out of 5. Benji's dog, Cash Dog, gets a mention in this song, so it's a great song. The lyrics are poorly written. Other than that, it's a pretty good song. Yeah, okay.
I'm shocked at the Punk News one. Punk News was the least giving of compliment. Like, so this is a 4 out of 5. That is insane. They literally destroyed it. There's a review of our debut EP, and they're like, "This, I don't even know how to review it because we can't give zeros here." No, they're a very tough crowd.
Yeah, and they've been tough on multiple other Good Charlotte releases. So Punk News said that an honorable mention for the highlights of this album is The Day That I Die, which sounds like a country ballad at first, but then it moves on to imitating Social Distortion style. Again, something I think Benji Madden and Joel Madden would be delighted to hear. Good Charlotte tries enough new ideas to keep things interesting while still remaining true to the sound of their first album without getting boring and repetitive. Fans will still remain fans, hopefully, and the people who hate them will, well, still hate them. I don't expect punk elitists to change anytime soon and realize that this is a good album.
Pretty good. I'm really shocked. Yeah,
that's like very good coming from Punk News. Rate Your Music, which I guess is just like a fan aggregator site, but this person said that they think this song is ripped off of I'm Dying Tomorrow by Alkaline Trio. I don't know that Alkaline Trio song, but I don't know. I think this is like a pretty common concept, so I don't want to say that the fact that they talk about a concept that Alkaline Trio also does means they're ripping it off. But who knows?
I mean, this review is clearly someone that is not a fan.
This is probably someone who was an Alkaline Trio fan and stumbled along this Good Charlotte.
Particularly, like, if a From Here to Infirmary fan, they might not have had the most favorable view for Good Charlotte in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
A very specific crowd there.
Yeah. So, Rocked Reviews. Rocked Reviews is... the guy's name is Luke, from what I've understood.
Luke. This was not nice, Luke.
I did not watch this whole video because this whole video was like 31 minutes long, and I watched like 3.5 minutes, and I was like, this is already 3.5 minutes of my life I'm not getting back. Obviously, listeners, you know I am not like sensitive to negative criticism of Good Charlotte. I read negative reviews of their records all the time. In fact, I always try and make sure that I have some negative reviews in with the positive ones that I share because I think it's important to get the whole picture.
Sure.
So, however,
this is the Ben Shapiro review.
Yeah.
Over here. Yeah.
I do not like this guy. His whole thing, this segment, is like if you subscribed to his Patreon and gave him this amount of money, he would review an album that he hates. And I just think that, like,
it's just silly. I mean, you're just clearly playing to, a particular niche role at that point. And who really enjoys that, right?
I mean, someone gave him $50 to do it.
What can I say? The future's a weird place.
Yeah. Anyway, why we bring this guy up is because he was not a fan of this song. So essentially he said that they are hypocrites for having Hold On juxtaposed with this song. And again, that kind of juxtaposition of having Hold On and even Moving On, which are about depression and like other ways, to me, it's having those songs on the record kind of is making me think, all right, this person is like making a certain choice. But he said, you have no idea how badly that can mess with someone's head, especially a 13 or 14-year-old who doesn't understand themselves. And basically saying, there are people that are that bad in life, and they think suicide is an option, and I will never argue if someone takes their own life. It's their choice, but that's not something to sing about and praise. It should never be an option. It is that bad.
I mean, what happens if he listens to like Creep by Radiohead? I mean, there's so many.
Right.
Again, look, there's more, and you hit the nail on the head. There's more positive songs on the record, I would say, than
Hold
negative.
on,
So,
yeah.
So if we're going to look at this thing as, and let us not forget, in 2002, this was not the era of the single that we live in now. So this was, I listened to the whole thing front to back a million times. I wasn't like, oh, I got to go listen to that the day that I die. Like that wasn't the. Well,
and it was like when you were listening to CDs, that's what you did. Like you listened to the whole CD. Right.
So yeah, I just think it's easy to frame it this way now. But again, there are so many songs that I couldn't even begin to list.
I mean, so many like Linkin Park songs,
A million, literally. we could curate our own Spotify playlist after this about really depressing songs that
they're like, I'm gonna kill myself.
Yes,
I'm gonna kill myself when I don't see the light.
No, this was just easy fodder for somebody that gets paid to spew shit.
Yeah,
good for him though. Hell of a job. I hope he's
right. I mean,
paying their rent.
Look, I agree what he says that suicide, like, it should never be bad enough that someone
certainly can't condone, glorifying it as we've discussed. Sure.
Yeah, but I will say, and I actually really strongly disagree that it's hypocritical. And here's why. Having been there, I know what it's like to feel kind of the darkness and having felt the light. And if you tell kids, I'm probably a little emotional here. I'm very emotional right now. If you tell young kids that they can't talk about their thoughts that are too dark because they're like triggering or upsetting, and that they can't listen to music about those moments, do you know what's going to happen? Is those kids are just not going to talk about it and I say kids, but that goes to young adults and adults too, but those people are just not going to talk about it when they are having depression, when they are having thoughts of self-harm and suicide. And it is so important to extend the conversation about mental health far beyond, it gets better, you can get help. People need to know it is okay to talk about the darkest thoughts they're having.
When I read Luke's quote, I revert back to the Star Wars, only Siths speak in absolutes. It's if this was a creative outlet that actually helps, these fellows blow off some steam and turn something positive. They wrote a great pop song. Good for them, So he totally contradicts. Getting at saying that you can't discuss it, hint at it, whatever. Again, it's just so contradictory. And in this case, it was turned into something positive because I don't believe that this is endorsing self-harm. No. So yeah, again, it's too bad that look, and that's the other thing with 2020. Everybody has a voice now. Everybody has a forum, and sometimes people say really unfortunate things that are just they're not good. And what he's saying is not good either because it is discrediting having a discussion, as you said, and that's key.
Excuse me. I recently did a podcast called Crave the Sound, which is out of CU Boulder. And this kid had just contacted me wanting to talk about the band Arizona, who I have really appreciated how they have talked about mental health. And I remember he asked me like what I thought continuing the conversation would be like, or what I thought progress would look like in terms of mental health and music. And I remember saying that like, you have to be able to talk about the day-to-day and the bad things and not just, oh, like I found hope and like I used to be sad, but I'm not anymore.
Absolutely.
That's, they're so on albumoftheyear.org. I won't do this person the pleasure of reading this, but there was another reviewer that had clearly watched this Rock Reviews review. Although I think very much this person did not get the album because he said that Hold On was a little serious, hopeful moment in an otherwise pretty careless and let's just have fun type of album. So I'm kind of like, I really don't think you listened to The Story of My Old Man or Emotionless, but
just the person that should be reviewing the record. Yes.
Right.
Or
I was
any
like,
song. Yeah.
I really don't think you listened to like a lot of this record. Like, but yeah, no, this person was like basically saying they can't excuse this song for condoning suicide. And we also have reviews from Plugged In and Common Sense Media, which are both like family-oriented, conservative Christian sites that kind of will. Let me put them both up. I'm trying to remember which is which. Plugged In is from Focus on the Family, so they are specifically religiously oriented.
So I go to for my review.
Yeah,
I can't say
it's interesting though, because it's like I find that really cool to look at. Like that's a perspective.
I'm sure they love the new Reliant K.
Yeah. And Common Sense Media, I think, is just a family kind of oriented thing. I don't think Common Sense Media is specifically Christian, though I'm not sure. Plugged In said under objectionable content that it's easy to interpret The Day That I Die as a pro-suicide song. Common Sense Media said that parents need to know that this album is a minefield of behavior to be avoided or a rich choice of conversation about tough subjects such as suicide, The Day That I Die. So, you know, some of those sites have taken a lot of pleasure in Good Charlotte because they do have a lot of family-oriented songs, and they do have a lot of like God and faith kind of oriented songs. Two kind of retrospective type reviews I'll mention. So Punktastic had a 15-year retrospective on the album where they said that The Day That I Die's nostalgic rose-tinted look at the final chapter of someone's life gave us another opportunity to sing something we didn't know how to articulate ourselves. And with our feelings rarely discussed at such a young age, it gave us a song to smile along to when we may have been struggling internally.
They summed it up better than me. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Consequence of Sound also name-dropped it in their review of Youth Authority, basically talking about how some of the lyrics in this song now feel a little too on the nose, but, you know, when they were kids, they just ate it up. And that Youth Authority kind of reins in some of the blanket statements and is more personal than universal. I want to read some comments from songmeanings.com because that is my favorite website. There's a user, I'm not going to read any of their comments, but there's a user that's like X Bright Eyes X that has commented on a lot of Good Charlotte songs on Song Meanings, always saying like almost the same thing and just like very negative. And so like every song someone
it's me.
Like,
I gotta be honest, it's what I do on Tuesdays at 2. I just can't help myself.
Wow, it's really all come full circle, Drew.
Although there is someone named born on August 10th, and that is my birthday.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very funny. Yeah, so this Born on August 10th said, I honestly believe this song is The Day You Die, is that you go to a great spiritual paradise. So that's why I think they're singing this song.
That's it. 810.
Unsung Zero said, sad song, saccharine though, especially when Benji sings. Yeah.
You know, I have to admit though, the fact that they knew that word the year they left that comment, like the median age for the folks commenting on this are probably like 16. How did they know what saccharin was at 16?
I knew what saccharin was when I was 16.
I didn't. I thought it was saccharini until you just said it.
I definitely knew what it was, although I probably would not have used it in a sentence. But also, I could
describing a Good Charlotte song.
Right. But also, I could see my 15-year-old self like trying to sound really smart and being like, "I'm going to use this like word that I just learned." You know?
The other one was Genu84. So again, we're dealing with some older folks now.
Yeah. Right.
I also like GC Riot Girl 27 Made. And wasn't that was their clothing company, right? Made?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So GC Riot Girl 27 Made said, I like it, though I don't recommend listening to it if you are depressed.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Which, like, Fair. And you know, there will be a very clear content warning in the intro as well as in the notes of the show. I always try to do that anytime anything about like mental health is mentioned, and I think especially relevant here.
I know this happened too with Adam's song.
Yeah.
And again, though, I also know that they never intended for it to be perceived in that manner. And that's just, and I don't want to sound like like an old person here, but like if you listen to like This Is the End, like the Tour song, like there's so many. This still at the core of it is intended to be poetic, and art-like, and how we perceive it it's so key in that. So
yeah. I'm sure some of it does.
It's just too bad, though, that there are lines that we can certainly perceive in a particular manner. It's too bad that folks are in a spot where this kind of helps be fuel for that.
Yeah. I mean, and I think definitely a lot of Good Charlotte fans hold the band close because the band has helped them through tough stuff, you know?
That's my counter to that. Yeah. So how many folks listen to this song and this album and we're so happy to have it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really tough.
Yeah. So I'll read one comment here. Jenster said, I think people have read this song wrong. In a lot of their songs, Good Charlotte sing about not appreciating life or not realizing that they are living life right now, so they're missing out on all this great stuff. I think this is saying that finally when they're going, they're realizing what they've done and finally appreciating life to its fullest. Maybe I'm wrong, but I prefer to look at it in a half-full way, not half-empty. And as for ripping apart Good Charlotte, get a life and don't bother commenting if you don't like the band.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I will say, just in terms of the interpretation of this song, like, a lot of it does feel very open to interpretation, but the lines about, like, writing a letter
to
his mother.
Like it's a mixed bag. I guess I can't help but think this really reminds me of like the late 90s and early 2000, correlating gun killings to video games.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and that was a very big thing, was in the kind of early mid 2000s.
Grand Theft Auto, particularly.
Well, and then it was like music and suicide.
Right.
Huge. Yeah.
I mean, even further back with like NWA and literally cop killing. But the reality, though, it becomes like if it wasn't this outlet, then it would have been something else. It could have been a movie where, a teen kills themselves. And again, I'm not in any way trying to undermine the awful reality, but nor do I think we should glorify this in any capacity. But
no.
But again, if it wasn't this, then it's something more explicit. And if it's not that thing, whatever that thing is, then it's another thing. And I think in the arts we can find this in a slew of places. It just depends how what lens are we looking at this through.
Well, and not to go down this rabbit hole because that's its own podcast, but like people talk about the show 13 Reasons Why being like causing suicides, and it didn't. Not a TV show.
Sure.
Not.
Although honestly, I thought Joker was pretty fucking offensive.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, that I thought really glorified things in a very particular manner. But again, like there's in those settings, there's not really much to interpret. It's very literate and explicit. So yeah, but oh gosh, yeah, Joker I was not a fan.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I'm definitely not big. I'm just not big on like any of the comics or anything.
No, but even if had you been for just there was a certain depiction that was just totally gross.
I everything I kind of heard about that movie, I was like, this just does not seem like something I would like in many ways.
Sure.
A few YouTube comments we'll read real quick. Paul Caruso says, for a song about suicide, this is extremely catchy.
Hell yeah.
I mean, yeah, not denying it. This is a very good comment from user Pork Chop. This hits home. Fire emoji, rock hands, knife, 100, skull. 2020, still a depressed teen, but I'm 28. Honestly, relatable.
Relatable content, and I'm
Right.
32. Yeah.
Right. User Deadly Splinters says, if I decide to check out in life, I'll listen to this first. Folk Metal Miss says, this was always my favorite as a kiddo. I preferred Benji's raspy voice to Joel's smooth singing. It takes me back. Jason Lavallo says, if you don't realize the social distortion influence, GTFO.
Again, just an interesting way to comment on a Good Charlotte song is to really
right.
show your superiority. But
right.
Yeah, it certainly has a very particular flavor. But I still maintain, I think those two really do sound alike. Like they could switch roles if they wanted.
They could, but I can very easily, I mean, I don't know, probably I've spent more time listening to them than I think you have in the past decade, but
you would be considered a grandmaster of
right.
Good Charlotte. So I've been watching that
right.
the show on Netflix where she's playing chess, and I can't think of the name. Queen's Gambit.
Okay.
Queen's Gambit? Something like that. The Grandmaster is the highest level. You would be the Grandmaster. I did my Charlotte Tree.
I did my Spotify Wrapped. My sister texted me that she was in like the top 0.5% of Youngblood listeners.
Okay.
And she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. I love him so much."
I heard him the first time the other day, and I don't want to be the old man, get off my porch, but it wasn't for me. But
see, I was a little like old man, get off my porch at first, but then I gave him a chance. I read some interviews. I love the new album. But so she did that for her Spotify Wrapped, and then I did my Spotify Wrapped, and it was like the top 0.005% of Good Charlotte listeners.
But now, where do you rank with Social Distortion? Because if you're not in the top 0.5% for them, then you're essentially a non-fan.
Right. I'm a fake. I'm a poser, guys. Yeah. I don't know. I've never listened to Social Distortion. I probably should. Maybe that's like a separate deep dive, is like listening to.
Look, I think you've made it this far in life. I don't know that you necessarily need to hear them. But no, again, I just love that someone would post such, that elitist approach on the comments of a Good Charlotte song. Like, oh my gosh, that just reminds you like that's like being a hamster among skinny pigs, or
hamster among skinny pigs. That's good.
Enter your silly pun here, but yeah, again, what a success though to be a band that has to spark this sort of dialogue, right?
Yeah.
I mean, aside from the fact that we've discussed this for over an hour now, but I mean, like, to have a bad review, to have so many good reviews, to have all these types of comments, like
to have someone that hates the record enough they make like a 31.5-minute video.
Someone got paid to knock it.
Yeah,
like that is an entirely different tier of success.
Oh my god, yeah.
I hope, and my fingers are crossed, I really hope that our new material will allow us that opportunity to enter that tier, because it's special. Yeah.
So we've got a couple questions to wrap up.
Sure. Oh, and I wasn't citing the time. It's just funny because, again, like, how many bands can you do this with? I mean, it would be hard to do this for our records. And you can do this for 100 of their songs, which is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, this is episode 50, which is ridiculous.
We're halfway there.
I still feel like I just started this.
Sure.
But yeah, so I want to go back to our kind of big question of the week, which is this song glorifying or romanticizing suicide?
Well, again, I hate to admit that, it probably is, because it's making light of a very serious topic that you have control over. So I suppose it is, but I just want to reiterate that I think the landscape in the year 2000, and let's be honest, they wrote this between 1999 and 2001. Mm-hmm. I just think we've come a long way in terms of, having dialogues, being open. The negative connotations are just not the same anymore. I mean, there's still some stigma to it. Don't get me wrong, but like, I mentioned I see a psychologist. There was a time though where 20 years ago, that would be frowned upon for sure. And
or it would be something that you wouldn't just like tell people.
Sure. And God, I mean, even prior to that, then it gets even worse.
Yeah.
So I just think, again, when we look at this era, I mean, in God, not to bring up like Blink, but like, gosh, if we were to dissect the Blink-182 song from 1999, like
Adam's song.
Oh, no, that aside, I mean, even just some of the, the sexual tones.
Yeah.
Again, and, and this actually is an opportunity for me to say, like, there's things that I said in particular about some of our songs where, like, I totally cringe at what I said.
There's definitely some of the, like, first I Call Five songs that I listen to and I'm like, it's such a great song, but it's very much, like, of a different time.
It is. And it just, what's unfortunate, it's twofold, really. What's good is that we've learned, and we look back and we're like, man, what the fuck were we thinking? But at the time, genuinely, I didn't see that content as being as gross and negative as it was. And even in between songs, like, there was something that I won't repeat that I used to say prior to my last mistake. And it was just like, what was I saying? Oh my God.
That's like the song I was thinking of just now. Yeah.
God. But again, and this doesn't, this doesn't give us a pass, but at the time it was just like, oh, those stupid girls. Like, but man, I wish I knew, I wish I knew then what I know now. But I think, aside from, we're just in a better time for having honest discussions about, whether it's sexuality, whether it's about, sexual orientation, whether it's about mental health. I also think it's just an age thing. When we wrote that, I was, from not only when we wrote it, but to performing it, it was 18 to 23 years old. I'm 32 now, and it's so easy to reflect and say, holy shit. But man, I just wish, I wish I could have seen it differently then. And I don't want to say that we were just a product of the time and it was all okay, but it was certainly different 10 years ago. It was certainly different 20 years ago. And I guess that's the lens that I approach the way that they wrote this song. So it's easy for me to kind of give them more of a pass. But yeah, I mean, at the core of it, it sure seems like they're singing about killing themselves.
Yeah. So again, my interpretation here and how I will answer this question, I think, obviously it's colored by my own experience. It's colored by the fact that I have a degree in psychology. It's colored by the fact that when the first season of 13 Reasons Why came out, I spent God knows how many hours writing and researching this like psychological analysis of it. And then I wrote about the fourth season too. I don't think this song romanticizes or glorifies suicide but I say that because I have the understanding that like if someone is talking like this about the last day of their life, they're in a really dark place, get them help now. But I do think this is a song, and again, we will have like a very clear content warning. This is definitely a song that would be very upsetting, I think, if you are depressed and kind of on the edge. Like,
Sure.
But it also depends on someone's temperament, because someone could listen to this and just find it triggering and upsetting if they're kind of like on that kind of edge period.
But then there's the bright, clean shine to it, and they might say, you know what? I feel good after all. So,
the value in just feeling understood. Like, okay, I've had these dark thoughts. Someone else had them. I'm not the only one that feels like this. And that's a value. So I don't see it as glorifying suicide, but I do see how it could potentially be upsetting or triggering.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
So how has this song held up for you over time?
Again, I didn't listen today, but I listened to a bunch yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, lyric content-wise, it didn't change my life in 2020, but I still think, again, at the core of it, it's a great pop rock song that experimented with some different tones. And man, like I keep bringing up that riff. I just think they did a hell of a job, and it really helped expand the palette of that LP, and it was just another different approach. Because again, we've heard so many, and I've said this in different ways, but we've heard so many pop punk, pop rock, pop, whatever we want to call it. We've heard bands write what really could be perceived as the same song 11 times.
Right.
And we might have been guilty of that ourselves on a particular LP. And it's just easy to fall into that trap of like, this is what we sound like. I think these guys did a great job at really having such a variant and such a different sound across the board. And this song, to me, it stood out as a very particular sound in 2002 that we hadn't heard from a pop rock band.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. It's funny because, like I said, very clearly, yes, of course, I still have mental health issues. Past few years, it's been a lot more like anxiety than like suicidal depression. That hasn't been an issue for a very long time. I don't know, but my thoughts on this song, like what it means, kind of have gone back and forth over the years, but I think it's so well constructed in terms of how it kind of sounds like a country song, but it's also definitely a pop punk song.
Sure.
So what has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
Well, and I hate to, there's sort of like that old toy that I had when I was little that I really liked. No, again, they, as I explained, they were that band outside of Blink and Green Day. And, I think for a lot of younger folks, those were like the gateway bands.
Totally.
But this was like that different, like my brother liked Blink and Green Day, and he was like a total square.
He was an army.
Yeah, well, I hate saying that, but yeah. So like, Good Charlotte was just, and it's so hilarious that I'm using them as part of my entrance into punk rock, but like they were literally talking about social distortion. Exactly. They had spiked hair. Like they gave you that, and I referenced CBGBs earlier. Like they were the punk rock band that was, super pop punk, but like if it had it not been for them, I don't know that I would have heard AFI in 2002. I don't know that then that would have, bred a love for hardcore later in my life. So, man, I hate to get so emotional over Good Charlotte, but yeah, I think they really have.
Don't worry, we do that here.
I believe it, but yeah, no, they, again, outside of Green Day and Blink, they just kind of help, Newfound Glory, Good Charlotte, like Midtown, those bands really, they really grabbed me. Saves the Day, The Starting Line, all that. But
so I'm surprised you didn't see Newfound Glory and Good Charlotte on the Honda Civic tour in 2003.
I was not allowed to go. My parents, they were tough, and it was in Camden, New Jersey. Not the best of areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like they were at the forefront of that. Outside again, that top tier. It was like, oh man, like look at this punk rock band on TRL, cool. And of course there was Sum 41, but these guys were something different. The Maryland connection was important. And then again, interestingly enough, they had one of the easiest bass songs. I was like, hey, I remember being in my buddy's basement in 8th grade, like, hey man, I could play this song. There was that, and there was a Weezer song that were like which was Holiday, or Island on the Sun.
Island in the Sun.
And I believe it actually is Island in the Sun parentheses Holiday, but it was hearing them, hearing that, hearing Little Things, hearing this LP. They were all integral in my journey of bass playing.
I love that.
And it's been cool. Yeah. So I'm bummed I never got to see them. I trust that they'd actually be good too. They seem like they'd be a great live band. But yeah, certainly genre, spanning, a different look, a different sound. And I tip my hat to those guys.
Amazing. Well, do you have any last words about The Day That I Die?
Jesus.
About Good Charlotte, like about I Call Fives, or about yourself?
No, and I hope to be here tomorrow. No, and of course, thank you for having me. I think this is, it's so, it's so in depth and well thought out, and again, I appreciate you having me, and
yeah,
I Call Fives sooner rather than later. Again, it'll be within a couple of months. And then hopefully we'll have even more later in the year.
Amazing. So we do a Generation GC and Friends Spotify playlist. So I'm going to put the song that we discussed and, some of the others that we kind of mentioned. I'll put, I guess, give me two things. One, I Call Five song you want to give listeners, and then just anything you've been listening to lately that you want to share with the class.
Okay, let's see my recent Spotify. So I did gravitate, though, immediately towards Sing It Loud by MXPX, just because again, there's such a correlation between Good Charlotte and MXPX, and I didn't really realize it until now. Otherwise, I heard a song by this band called Friend Circle.
Oh, Goalkeeper. Mark Giuliano from Goalkeeper was talking about them.
They're not far from our home area.
Yeah.
I just put up their Spotify. They have a very, very yellow picture. Joyride 2.0 is the name of the song. It seemed pretty good.
I gotta jam them because Mark was also talking about them.
Yeah, I was surprised because that area really hasn't bred any good bands. Vineland had, it's closer to the shore. It's just not. It's a weird area.
It's kind of like in between Shore and Philly, right?
Yeah, so it's about 45 minutes south of Philly, but it's just in a weird area.
Yeah.
And for us, I guess we can just stick with Old Faithful and we'll do elevator music.
Perfect. Did I ever tell you, by the way, I wrote a paper about elevator music once?
I don't believe you did. That is amazing.
I'll tell you about that after we finish.
Okay.
Amazing. Well, Drew, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it.
Where can people keep up with you on the internet?
Well, so obviously like all the streaming stuff. Otherwise, we're Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And we're going to have a much more professional approach as we release the new stuff. But yeah, so iCall5s.com. I'm hoping nobody took it. But yeah, so we hope to be back in all the major spots, and we appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
I don't see another iCall5s.com. Yeah,
good, because I stopped paying for it like 4 years ago, so maybe it's time to we'll get her back up.
Yeah, renew that URL. Drew, thank you for coming on the show. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Last week, we talked about East Coast Anthem from the album Good Charlotte. Next week, we'll be talking about a song from the Chronicles of Life and Death. My name is Molly Huddleston. I've been your host. You can follow Generation GC at Generation GC Pod, POD, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also follow me, Molly, at M. Huddleston, MHUDELSON, on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you all for tuning in. Please make sure to follow or subscribe to the show wherever you listen. Rate, review, and please, please, please tell your friends because word of mouth is so important. Thanks for tuning in.